Hello everyone, welcome to an analysis of dance where we discuss the movements and debuts of the Billboard Dance charts in immaculate detail with in-depth reviews of each debut each week. Man, it's nice when a week is so consistently balanced across the board, both in terms of activity and the overall quality of the debuts, because when you look at what actually debuted here, you saw a lot of interesting stuff coming through, and the quality was pretty good. Not really gonna complain too much. I mean, outside of one clear exception, there wasn't really a ton of mind-blowing new stuff, but in the grander scheme of things, I'll definitely take a week like this that's consistently solid, and especially considering, again, I've got a road trip coming up, I will take the coming weeks when they come. So let's start with Hot Dance, which actually had debuts this week. That's a good start. Alongside Dracula by Tame Impala and Jenny at number 1, which is just utterly dominant on radio, where it's topping the radio charts outright, despite the fact that streaming has been surprisingly going down for this one. I think that's really telling, but also a really clear sign that this is going to stick around for a very long time. Hell, there's a very significant gap between it and Another Drink by Marshmello and Kelsey Ballerini at number 2, which is, again, weirdly stable on streaming despite the fact that radio is not really touching this. If it actually gets pushed to that format, so this could actually genuinely make a run, although knowing Marshmello's strategy of releasing these sort of songs, I don't really see that happening. Not exactly going to complain, obviously, but for now it keeps down No Broke Boys by Disco Lines and Tinashe at number 3, and at this rate this song is just really overstaying its welcome for me, and the fact that Disco Lines has not been able to follow it up with anything of anywhere near as big of a note, I think that's really telling in a lot of ways. Now, can we please just get some more deserving acts to actually knock this off? Seriously, there's a lot of great dance music that the US is just straight up ignoring, although with Take Me by Danny at number 4, yeah, this one I'm a little bit more hesitant in embracing at the moment, especially considering the news about a certain other song that I'll get to later on, which would probably end up having a ripple effect with more acts starting to get exposed for that sort of thing. And with this song, yeah, the allegations of AI aren't exactly helping this one. I wouldn't really be surprised if it starts falling off fast once people actually expose it, but that's a different conversation. But thankfully, on a much better note, we got the massive rebound across all margins for Talk to You by Another featuring 54 Ultra up to number 5, which is likely thanks to the World Cup using it as one of their official songs, and considering that the streaming was already great on this one, having a huge sales boost thanks to the audience who still watches the World Cup, it's legitimately awesome to see. I may have many issues with FIFA as an organisation, and the World Cup this year was an utter disaster for so many reasons, but if it's going to lead to this and say Die Die by Shakira and Burna Boy, which is also a good song, I'm not really going to complain too much. Both of those songs gaining huge momentum is welcome, and it's really telling that once you skip past Miss You by Oliver Tree and Robin Schulz down to number 6 as it's continuing to just utterly collapse on streaming, it actually managed to beat out our massive new debut this week that I think everyone saw coming and is not really all that surprising. Take Me Back by Kygo and McNown at number 7. Now with this one, I'm not surprised at all that it debuted higher, especially considering that McNown is actually a pretty decently big artist in his own right, and given that the sales were going to be huge behind this considering it's a country artist and a lot of those get big sales on average, I'm not really surprised this debuted as high as it did. I wouldn't really mind about it, but we'll get to that more later on. It's probably going to end up sticking around, but as a result, for now at least, it knocked down Free Your Mind by Prosper and Clooney at number 8, and given the new single was doing ridiculously big numbers on its first day, yeah, these two might have actually opened up the door to get some genuine success moving forward, and this doesn't seem to be a fluke. They've actually got some staying power. I'm not really going to complain. But the more interesting story for me is the complete abrupt loss for Meant to Be by Cunt Sniffer down to number 9, and I think it's really interesting considering that this is falling as hard as it is, despite the fact that streaming has been okay, it's not actually been that bad, and Misery by Pupsies is surging up the Hot 100, which you'd think would have a ripple effect here, but I guess after the initial virality gave this song a huge spike in streams, it went back to a more normal rate. Not really gonna complain too much about it, and given that the allegations aren't exactly going away for this guy anytime soon, yeah, I'm not really against this stalling out already. Oh, and Way Too Self-Aware by Ian Asher is at number 10. God, the reality of Oscar Medkay remixing this damn Temper City song, it's absolutely blowing my mind in so many unfortunate ways. Can we please stop remixing this song? It's not good at all. And that takes us nicely to outside the top 10, where outside side of My Jealousy by Vivi Baby and OVG leaving yet again. Another case where, just like Meant to Be, I think this got a big streaming spike thanks to Misery's mainstream breakthrough, but wasn't really going to last. And again, this is the bad song of the three, so I'm not really going to complain. I think the most notable story that really should be highlighted is the utter collapse of Like a Prayer by Josh Fawaz to 20. And alongside that, we got a whole amount of official and credible news sources coming out saying that Josh Fawaz himself has admitted to using generative AI on not just the vocals here, as I think everyone expected, but also the drums, which you think for a producer you'd actually be able to do that properly. And I think it's really revealing on so many levels that the moment all this stuff comes out and the song goes bad viral for being AI garbage, it ends up utterly collapsing, where people don't want to associate with a song this blatantly AI and also this terrible. And if anyone wants to try and discredit the whole AI thing, Josh Fawaz himself has actually come out showing how he made the vocals on Suno. And quite frankly, that's one of the stupidest moves I think he could have ever done in this situation, giving Haven a run for his money for some of the worst ways to respond to criticism in this space that I've seen in recent memory. Oh, and also, fuck you, Josh Fawaz, you complete talentless hack. You pretty much destroyed any means of actually getting any sort of mainstream credibility or any sort of run as a DJ ever again. How do you make Hugo remixing soulless AI garbage look more promising than your garbage and atrocious music from an album that's just as creatively bankrupt as you'd expect? So yeah, fuck this guy, let's move on. And given that there's no jumps or comebacks this week, let's get into something that's a lot better, starting with our first debut that utterly surprised me on so many levels. Number 22, Paparazzi by Alximo. Okay, so I think some context is needed as to why this is so utterly mind-blowing to me, and this takes us back to the mid-2010s, where lots of new, relatively unknown producers were going down the routes of making dubstep remixes of established songs, which for some actually ended up working, especially considering that a lot of these did get used in a lot of montage videos over the years, and given that YouTube was prioritized pretty heavily in 2013 and 2014, this meant that a lot of these songs were able to actually get genuine chart runs, and the quality has been kind of good across them from what I've heard. And that takes us to Alximo, who posted this remix of Paparazzi by Lady Gaga on his SoundCloud all the way back in 2015. And this isn't the original version that was uploaded to YouTube back in 2015. No, it's actually a remaster that Alximo himself actually made, coming back to music for the first time in 11 years to remake this song with uncredited female vocals that sound way too organic to be AI. And quite frankly, this is one of the coolest ways that a song has charted in recent memory, especially considering that this guy had been well out of music for the last decade or so. To see him come back to this sort of success, I think that's really intriguing, and it helps as well that the remix is genuinely great. I'm really happy that this crossed over. It's very dated to that mid-2010s dubstep sound, but those wubs against a much more melodic approach that creates an absolutely fantastic atmosphere. It's surprisingly aged really well in comparison to a lot of other songs in this style, and even if obviously there's a little bit of hesitancy in embracing the vocals outright, considering that there's no credited vocalist for them, the fact that they sound so real and organic and have the level of belting presence that they do, or with vocal mixing that sounds more organic and natural, it's actually giving me more of an inclination to embrace them. They sound great and really do elevate the song, even if they are obviously not Lady Gaga, come on. And I think the remaster actually really improves upon what the original was kind of lacking, most notably that the vocals in the original track were smothered out way too much for my liking, where you could barely even hear Lady Gaga's vocals over the dubstep production, especially with the drop. And here they ditched that in favor of one of the more cleaner sounding vocal mixes that I've heard in recent memory, where again, the authentic bend to the vocals really shines through, and you can absolutely tell that whoever was singing this song really wanted to do it justice. I mean, I gotta imagine Alximo's reaction as a fully grown adult to this sort of material from his teenage years getting the sort of massive virality this long after it came out. I think it would have been a genuine surprise to him, and for me it's also a really welcome surprise. This is a great remix, really happy to see it here, and given the momentum it looks like it's going to stick around, we'd all be better off for it. Number 7, Take Me Back by Kygo and McNown.
Darling, I'd be running after you. If you could take me back, I'd take back what I said. Honey, I'd be chasing, I'd be begging you to take me back.
Whereas with this, I had significantly less high expectations, and really, can you blame me after the last couple of singles that Kygo's released? I mean, I get the reality where this would make sense, especially considering that McNown built a lot of his momentum off of his raw, authentic vocal style, and a much cleaner and more organic sounding mix that absolutely would fit into Kygo's more distinct appeals for me. And given that a lot of his other singles have really been lacking in that warmness and that genuine energy and atmosphere that I know he's capable of, I was at least hoping that this would be genuinely good, and after hearing it, yeah, you know what? This might be the best of the singles by far. For one, man, is it nice to see the more earnest charm of Kygo finally show through here, because between the galloping groove and the much more signature tropical house sound that he's become known for, all alongside those classic Kygo synth plucks from the mid-2010s when he was first breaking through, that sound just as great nowadays and really take me back to the era where he was consistently good for me. It's a brand of tropical house that he's desperately been needing to make for a while now, and here he absolutely nails it. And it's helped by McNown, who just sounds fantastic here. He's got a really great vocal performance that really just shone through, and given that the much more warmer belting tone of his is replaced for something that's a lot more grounded and real, it honestly makes the yearning in the lyrics actually sound really convincing coming from him, where he wants his ex to take him back and commit to the whole relationship fully again, and yeah, he sells it like he means it. I really get the appeal. I mean, the fact that this debuted as high as it did, especially after 2 flop singles where one of them had the Hey Brother vocalist on it, I think that's really revealing in many ways. And given that the momentum for this is not slowing down, yeah, you know what? This could actually stick around. I think we'd be all better off for it. This is a genuinely good song. But now on to dance pop, where unsurprisingly we went back to the status quo. It's not interesting and there's no debuts at all. I mean, Madonna obviously lost our heart as alongside I Feel So Free exiting, we had Dance Tyria collapse to 15. Ouch. And more interesting comes in the return of It's Me by Illit at 14, and I can't even put this on Iconic by mistake actually sticking around the Hot 100, considering that it's been falling pretty consistently its whole run, which kind of gives me the impression people rediscovered this song and actually gave it more momentum than anyone expected. I don't really think I'm going to complain. That song's still really good. And since there's no debuts here and dance streaming only really had the big return of We Found Love by Rihanna featuring Calvin Harris at 15, yeah, let's just move swiftly on here. Now on Mediabase, well, at least it was way calmer than last week despite the huge influx of debuts and even a return. But in this case, considering that a lot of them fall under my previous review rules, yeah, this week's way more manageable than I would have expected. That's a big plus for me. But unfortunately, I can't be remotely anywhere near as generous to our new number 1 that surged up despite being hot garbage. Get Away by Kungs and Boys Noise at number 1. Look, the song itself is not good by any means, but what this represents for the chart at the moment is very concerning, where this sort of new disco stuff has just fallen completely out of fashion with a lot of people, where even acts that I liked in that scene like Purple Disco Machine and Kungs are delivering some of their worst material this year, and quite frankly the fact that this was rewarded with such a big run despite being bland sanitized garbage where both artists are truly capable of leagues better than this, yeah, not good, and especially disappointing too because it overtook Houseboy by Aluna, Will Sass and Timbaland at number 2. Although thank god it looks like Billboard for some reason gave this a number 1 spot on their chart this week. Looks like the midweek run that this had actually benefited at least in one place, and it's still going to make the year-end list, so I'm not that mad about it. Thank god though that it looks like Echo by the Chainsmokers and Oaks is going to capitalize in number 3, where it looks like the spins are slowing down a little bit, but they're at least consistent. That'll be something that will beat it over the last 2 songs I just talked about. And speaking of which, we had the big expected collapse of I Need You by Bunt and Malou at number 4. And quite frankly, I'm amazed the song this low-key actually hit number 1 to begin with, so yeah, this fall wasn't really surprising at all. Thankfully following it though is Love Sensation by Madonna up to number 5. Man, it's nice to see a pop act consistently get success on this format. It feels really rare nowadays, despite the fact that a lot of the crossovers from that scene have been okay. Hell, it bulldozed over Don't Want to Go Home by Medusa featuring Henry Chamomile in number 6, and seriously, at this point it's just utterly bizarre to me that Silence hasn't charted, and this is remaining remarkably stable in the top 10 right now, although given that new single with Khalid that's actually doing decent numbers, yeah, that might be really the only reason why this will actually end up falling out anytime soon. Not really going to complain because that song is good, but we'll talk about it if it charts. Then there's Meet Again by Cascade, Leighton Giordani and Natalie Jane at number 7, which is doing pretty well. I'm not really going to complain about this one sticking around. It's nice to see Cascade get multiple hits this year. Followed nicely by Gimme Love by Lazewo at number 8, which is on track to make the year-end list, and given that Lazewo has not gone anywhere near as big with this sort of style on this format, and given that Lazewo has not gotten a song nearly anywhere as big as this song on this format, yeah, that might be a really good sign for them moving forward. I really hope more material charts. The quality is definitely there. But where the momentum should absolutely stall out is for Sad Girls by BB Rexa and David Guetta at number 9. And at this point, it's just getting ridiculous. Can we please throw out this bland, sanitized garbage? We really don't need more material from BB Rexa charting anymore, especially when all of her authentic pivots coming off of New Religion just really felt so artificial to me. And of course, the moment that she underperforms, she goes back to David Guetta. Any goodwill I had towards this rollout died after this song. And finally, Ultra Love by Kashmir, Jason Ross and Brianna Grace just utterly free fall down to number 10, and really I'm not surprised by this considering that it did way better than I think anyone expected. Looks like Kashmir's gonna make the year-end list for the first time in God knows how long, and getting Jason Ross its first hit since After You in 2022, yeah, definitely welcome for me. And sadly, that disappointment also translates over to our fall-offs, where I actually don't mind most of these at all. Yes, it's nice to see Outlaid by Loud Luxury and Sad Boy gone, even if it will unfortunately make the year-end list, but the other ones really stung to see go, even if in cases like Favor by Fisher and Tones and I and Beautiful Places by Tiesto and Brianna Grace, they've got new singles going up the charts right now. They're kind of being replaced at this point, and honestly the quality is still there, but it does suck that Beautiful by Nima and Joji is gone too, as it will probably end up just missing the year-end list for 2026 despite being a genuinely excellent track, and man, it really did deserve better. Although at least it did much better on this chart than Bad Angel, I'll give it that. Although what's more interesting and revealing is the fact we only had 3 songs that fell this week outside of Ultra Love in the top 10. Wow. And on one hand, I'm not remotely going to complain that Satisfied by Calvin Harris and Jazzy just free-falled out of the top 10 to 16, where despite the fact that this hit number 1 and only has charted 10 weeks, it's already on track to be an absolute flop single on this format by his standards. Maybe the song being utter garbage is probably why I'm not going to complain that this is falling out fast. Hell, on the notes of garbage, we had Look From You by MKX expectedly just nosediving down to 40, as another song just like Heart I Never Met by Blake G, where it overperformed all expectations in the first couple of weeks, and then people realized the abomination that they put upon the listening public and threw it out fast. Good. But what isn't welcome for me and really made me annoyed when I first saw it was the utter collapse of Walk Away by Tritonal and Harley to 47. And since I haven't covered this song, let me just say outright that this is one of my favorite charting songs of the year, and seeing it underperform this badly fucking sucks. This song is excellent. I mean, this is the sort of melodic festival house that Tritonal has absolutely been nailing the last couple of years, and given how much Harley just absolutely delivers in the vocals here with one of the most catchy hooks of the whole year, the fact that this underperformed while a lot of mediocre garbage is actually sticking around, it fucking sucks, let's be real here. And it's even more disappointing when you consider what jumped above it this week, alongside the not exactly interesting or promising return of Feel Again by Sonia Fodera with uncredited vocals from Karine Lamack scraping back at 50. And it's worth noting that every single debut from last week saw a jump this week. It was consistent momentum across the board. I mean, it sucks for half of these, ranging from Alabama 10 by Moonlight and Fordo at 41, or Cry For Me by Charmy featuring Pooh Bear actually sticking around at 39, or Energy by Ava Max and Beer at 38, or especially that fucking awful song Feeling Alive by The Hotel Lobby and F Hero at 37. Really? You're making this a thing? But thankfully they're balanced out by the other 4 debuts from last week that are all genuinely good, and I'm really excited to see stick around. Whatever Turns You On by Axwell featuring Bon at 34, Silver Lining by Jex at 31, and especially the huge surges for Woman by Peggy Go featuring Ayra Star at 25, and What a Life by Fisher featuring Florence Armand surging up to 22, where they're all looking like they're going to stick around and do considerably better. That's a net win. Sadly, the quality of the jumps outside of those is incredibly mixed, and there's a lot of mediocrity scattered throughout that's not welcome. Heartless by Mia Takarabi and Steve Aoki at 32, One More Sunday by Piggin at 30, Lovers on the Dance Floor by Blondish featuring Curtis Wells at 27, and most bizarrely for me, Like a Prayer by Josh Fawaz jumping to 14. And okay, seriously, at this point it feels ridiculous that this is the only place globally where this song is actually jumping, and of course it's on a format that doesn't favor quality by any means. I mean, this is a format that gave Loud Luxury multiple hits, for God's sake. Although given the intense backlash towards this song, I wouldn't be surprised if it starts translating over to radio and they dish this in record time. It's really revealing just how much audience backlash will absolutely translate. And given that this is the sort of song that radio programmers would yank once AI comes out about it, yeah, expect a major nosedive for this moving forward, or at least I goddamn hope so. And on Billboard charts, oh my god, it got absolutely intense with these sort of massive debuts that align quite nicely with all the considerable jumps across the board on Mediabase. I mean, the 2 big ones are pretty obvious, with What a Life by Fisher featuring Florence Armand at 23, and Woman by Peggy Go and Ayra Star at 24, both very welcome. But beneath that, we've got Lovers on the Dance Floor by Blondish featuring Curtis Wells at 33, One More Sunday by Piggin at 34, Whatever Turns You On by Axwell featuring Bon at 35, Silver Lining by Jex at 36, Energy by Ava Max and Beer at 39, and Heartless by Mia Takarabi and Steve Aoki at 40. A complete mixed bag there, to say the least. And thankfully, with our 6 debuts this week, there's a lot more quality here that's welcome, even despite some pretty mixed cases like Way Too Self-Aware by Ian Asher at 45, gross, and also the expected but kind of disappointing On Tonight by Silver Bumper at 48. Although I'm actually okay with this one a little bit more, considering that it's a global hit, and the fact that it's actually getting Silver Bumper some momentum in the States is kind of welcome. But the other 2 debuts I've covered more than make up for it. With Take Me Back by Kygo and Max McNown at 43, which is unsurprising and definitely welcome, and Dance by Slater at 44. Yes, this is actually on track to be a radio hit across the board. I'm legitimately shocked on so many levels, but it's absolutely welcome on so many levels too. And that only leaves 2 debuts to talk about, both of which initially looked promising, starting with number 49, Lost in the Crowd by ARTY and Laidback Luke featuring James Hersey. Another year, another ARTY song crossing over to this format, with a bunch of collaborators getting much more momentum than they expected. And in this case, it's a collaboration with Laidback Luke, who I would argue is one of the least memorable big names in the mainstream EDM scene of the 2010s, and James Hersey, of all people, who is coming off of the back of a pretty decent, if incredibly uninteresting collaboration with 2 pilots on Strangers that did decently well, and this actually managed to scrape through the bottom, and unfortunately I kind of get why it's taken so long to get here. I'm not really huge on this at all. I mean, the drops and the overall production here just sound really stock for the scene, going for a much more atmospheric brand of a festival house that doesn't really interest me or have any elements that stand out, and especially when the overall production quality is just not really there, especially in the percussion, which sounds surprisingly weak, where the drops feel like they're lacking any sort of massive groove or energy to really justify sounding the way they do. And while I'll at least give James Hersey some credit for for going for much more of a shoutier vocal style that reminds me a lot of On My Way by Axwell and Ingrosso. It's also the sort of thing where it just feels like a cheap crowd sing-along, and given that the overall production is giving him nothing to work with, yeah, what a waste of him. He deserved better than this. I mean, it just feels very tossed off and not particularly interesting, and given that I know ARTY is absolutely capable of leagues better than this, it was really disappointing. So yeah, not really a fan of this, unfortunately. You can probably skip it. Number 46, Don't Lose Your Head by Tiesto and Olivia Sebastianelli.
Don't think I normalize. Don't think you might hesitate. It's not your choice to make. Don't let the silence resonate before you come around.
Whereas I was considerably more excited to see this chart, all with the acknowledgement that this is actually surprisingly underperforming even on Warm's Global Top 100, which is a bit concerning for me considering that Tiesto's previous two singles did remarkably well there, but I guess the US is a bit behind, but absolutely welcome to giving him another chance, and in this case, yeah, this is absolutely worth it. In fact, you know what? I might actually consider this the best of the three singles from this rollout so far. I'm actually genuinely impressed by this. For one, the way that Olivia Sebastianelli's vocals just play into this mix just sounds fantastic, where they're bouncing off of the robotic vocoder vocals, delivering a really catchy refrain, and she's just absolutely belts across the entire track with a mix that gives her so much space and room to breathe. Between this and The Ceiling, she's actually getting a pretty decent amount of mainstream crossovers now. It's actually pretty exciting to see. She's got a lot of potential. I'd like to hear more from her. And when the mix is this absolutely huge and large driving trance groove that just sounds fucking incredible, especially with the layers of synths and the really catchy little vocal refrain that appears throughout the entire track. Again, the fact that this is underperformed on Warm while a bunch of mediocre garbage is sticking around there, it's really revealing of just how little people care about this, and that's a damn shame because honestly, on production and vocals alone, this might be one of Tiesto's best songs to date. Genuinely excellent across the board, and I really hope it actually gets a run in the US. We could really use this sticking around. And coming off of that, we've got Warm, which admittedly was a bit busier, but didn't really have the most interesting of debuts, all things considered. And that's a shame because there are some interesting stories around the board that would actually show some genuine promise. Case in point, the massive surge again for Talk to You by another featuring 54 Ultra number 1, which is just continuing to cement that 1000 plus spin lead. And my god, it's just absolutely welcome, especially when the competition is Moving to the Sun by Hugel, Ultranate, and Amal Angel at number 2, which is gaining incredible amounts of momentum in its own right, but given that it's got such a massive gap, I don't know if this is going to go to number 1. I'm not really against that, to be honest. Certainly enough to beat out Free Your Mind by Prosper and Clooney at number 3, which is gaining spins in its own right, but just feels really slow at this point. It's probably not going to hit number 1, that's a bit of a shame there. But thank god it's still this high, because the alternative is Satisfy by Calvin Harris and Jazzy at number 4, and seriously, why is this rebounding now? Do we really need to keep this garbage around? There's no reason for it to be here. Although it's probably just down to the fact that New Religion by BB Rexa and Faithless is just utterly free falling at number 5, and really at this point it's going to be on its way out pretty fast, especially with Sad Girls getting a lot of the momentum despite being worse. It is what it is. Oh, and speaking of which, Sad Girls by BB Rexa and David Guetta at number 6. Really, I don't see this having a huge amount of momentum long term, but it is sticking around much to our horror despite not being good at all. And it's sadly kept magnetic by the Bolsa from actually sticking anywhere at number 7. Real shame there, I would have preferred that jumping up. And then there's the welcome jump for Whatever Turns You On by Axwell featuring Bond continuing up to number 8, and really at this point I do see this actually making a run. It's got a lot of momentum behind it and it's not stalling out on its 3rd week, which is absolutely welcome. Whereas with Zone by MK featuring Poppy Baskcomb already down to number 9, yeah, this might be on its final legs, and good riddance for that too. Again, I'm getting really sick of this UK piano house movement now. And finally, against all odds, we actually saw Shinjuku by Frankie Rosado jump up to number 10. Yeah, I got nothing for this one. I have no idea why it's actually sticking around still, but I'm not really going to complain too much. It's still a really good song. Whereas with our fall-offs, there weren't exactly a lot of songs here that I outright loved. Yes, it does suck that, again, Beautiful by Nima and Joji is gone from here too, and it did take out a pretty solid solid song in Morning Coffee by Goodfella featuring Jitwam, but at the same time it also took out I Can't Wait by Bob Sinclair, Save My Love by Kygo, Khalid and Griffin, and especially Awake Tonight by Afrojack, Sia and David Guetta. Again, not really going to complain about these leaving, they're all not particularly good. But what I find interesting is that when you get to our falls, outside of Favor by Fisher and Tones and Night 18, it feels like a lot of these have really been non-starters on this chart for some reason. Acting Tough by Dean Turnley probably has a decent shot of making the year-end list at 33, but alongside it we had Girl by Jonas Blue collapsing to 35 out of nowhere, and In Your Eyes by a lesser one, One Republic, continuing to just free fall down to 37, despite the fact that the charts are decently well and it's got good streaming numbers behind it. Okay, this is utterly bizarre to me. How has this not become a thing? And it's more baffling when you look at what came back this week and actually jumped, because outside of Don't Want to Go Home by Medusa featuring Henry Cavill back yet again at 28, which shouldn't be anywhere near the top 40 right now, considering that Silence is actually doing decently well, but okay, sure. We get to our jumps and these are just utterly bizarre across the board. I've already talked about Shinjuku by Frankie Rosato in the top 10, and I'm not remotely against State of Mind by Jamie Jones and Camden Cox at 24. Honestly, I'm just kind of amazed that that song's actually doing as well as it is, but it's definitely welcome. But can someone explain to me why we're continuing to give Get Away by Kungs and Boys Noise more momentum at 21? Can this lazy new disco crap please go away? And on the note of lazy, why is I Never Knew by Adam 10 up to 31? Do we really need more room for this sort of bland, disposable tech house garbage, especially one that sounds as lazy as this does? Really? Why are we making this a thing? And since all 4 debuts are songs that I've actually not particularly covered at any point throughout, they're gonna at least be interesting to talk about, starting with number 40, Four to the Floor by Ofenbach and Starsailor.
We'd ran a little world, have a little girl, fall to the floor.
Man, talk about a duo who have been so incredibly easy to ignore throughout the majority of their career, and in this case, Ofenbach are the sort of name that I just have no patience for anymore. I mean, their 2 massive hits in the US and Head, Shoulders, Knees and Toes and Wasted Love were both terrible, and while Hurricane was fine, it doesn't make up for the fact that their global hits like For You and Be Mine were equally as bad. These guys just do not know how to make interesting music anymore, and considering that their whole slap house sound has really aged badly, it gave me no interest to listen to this at all. And that's before you realize that this is a remix of a song from the early 2000s by a group called Starsailor, who haven't really had the sort of mainstream crossover since this song, and really it's the sort of thing that's kind of fallen victim to time over the years. And after hearing this remix, yeah, they are absolutely the best part of this song, because everything else here is just not remotely interesting, nor good. I mean, it's a sort of bland, disposable and utterly forgettable tech house production that you've heard dime a dozen, and considering that the only good parts of this are the vocals, considering that Starsailor has a good vocalist leading them, yeah, that's really indicative of just how far Ofenbach have fallen over the years, especially when you have that deeper bass mixing with the farty synths that sound as unpleasant as ever, building into some atonal drops that have next to no melody outside of Starsailor's voice. And quite frankly, that shouldn't be the only thing that you have in a song like this. It's incredibly lazy yet again. Yes, the guitar and synth sound fine, and again, Starsailor's vocals are definitely needed here, but otherwise I didn't care for this at all. It's bland, forgettable, and the sort of reason why we shouldn't keep Ofenbach around. Let's just move on. Number 39, Whisper by Joel Corry. Speaking of names that have really fallen off in terms of mainstream notoriety nowadays, Joel Corry's back with a new single coming off of Devotion, Sweetest Emotion and Phases, which were both good songs, and given that a lot of his UK house movement has just not particularly led to much success at all, it's really revealing to me that this of all songs actually managed to debut this high on radio, and after hearing it, again, I'm a bit more mixed on this than I would like. I mean, the stabbier synths against the pluckier bass line and the much more summer-ready atmosphere, it is good. It does show that Joel Corry absolutely knows his way around some good production. But the problem here comes in the vocals, because whoever this is that's actually singing sounds terrible. Their wailing delivery combined with the really loud vocal mixing drawing more attention to their voice than they absolutely should, it just falls completely flat for me, especially when you have production that's otherwise this soft and restrained. Having a vocalist that's wailing this much just utterly ruins any atmosphere that you're going for. And at the end of the day, while Joel Corry did have some good production behind him, he also did intentionally pick these vocals to use in the song, and that's utterly disappointing on so many levels, because if you took those out or at least replaced them with someone who can actually sing, this would have been way better. As it is, just okay for me. It's not bad, but again, not exactly interesting either. Number 32, Everything's Fine PM by Alok and Jennifer Lopez.
I just don't feel right. I'm a box is checked, still feel low. Same soft buzz, same old glow. They say I'm lucky, I don't disagree. I just don't feel like the way it looks to be.
It's just the week of older established acts who haven't charted in a while getting another crossover here. Although at least in this case I can kind of get it with Alok, considering Dive Into Me did way better than I think anyone expected. So why not repeat the trick again with Jennifer Lopez, who is a considerably worse singer than Khalid, and the song itself, I'm pretty mixed on this one again. Come on. I mean, the production feels a bit too blown out, especially on the hook where it just doesn't sound great, especially when you have some really annoying distant vocal chops that get really noticeable and distracting fast. Hell, I didn't really like Jennifer Lopez's voice on this song to begin with. She sounds way more anonymous and pitchier than usual, which is not a good thing, but at least the ideas of the core were actually pretty good. There's a nice groove behind everything, even if it is a bit smothered out, and the deeper mixing of bass, especially with the Brazilian bass touches that Alok has become known for, they actually don't sound half bad. I can kind of see the appeal. I mean, not enough to say that I like this, but it's not as bad as I was expecting it was gonna be. And again, Alok's been showing improvements in the production quality. Give this a better mastering job and it would have actually turned out okay, but as it is, just kind of forgettable and not particularly good. That's all I'm gonna say. And finally, number 29, My Place by Josh Baker and Poppy Baskcomb.
Would it be alright if we intertwine?
So thank God that we now finally saved the best for last. And in this case, I think it's about time to say that, again, I'm getting really sick of this UK house trend, especially with acts like MK, DOD, and Sony Federo, who are making very bland, disposable, and extremely interchangeable versions of the sound. It really has me relying on acts like Josh Baker for any sort of quality there. And fair dues to him, he's been pretty consistent across the board, so of course working with Poppy Baskcomb would at least get him some quality. And in this case, yeah, it is good. It's by far the best of the debuts here. The plucky simply against the really great multi-tracking on the vocals here, where Poppy Baskcomb absolutely sounds like she gives a shit, unlike on Zone. All of the sort of underground club tone that reminds me a lot of the crossovers from the Eurodance scene in the late 90s and early 2000s, with that same large and really impressive atmosphere, all creating a really great groove behind everything, where you can absolutely hear Josh Baker's production quality shine through yet again. And given how much this sounds way better overall in terms of mixing and mastering compared to a lot of other crossovers in this scene, if this ends up actually sticking around as much as it is in the UK's top 100 right now, yeah, I think we'd all be better off for it. This is genuinely good, really nice to see it here. And even despite warm testing my patience here, this week was good enough where nothing was outright awful by any means. Even the two bomb spots were not the worst things I've heard in recent memory. I mean, the worst is obviously going to Fall to the Floor by Ofenbach and Starsailor. I don't really think that's a surprise. With Dishonourable runner-up going to Lost in the Crowd by ARTY and Laidback Luke featuring James Hersey, on sheer disappointment. I expected better from those names. But for best though, honestly, that was a pretty decent race for the top here, but I think Don't Lose Your Head by Tiesto and Olivia Sebastianelli is just barely going to get the top over our honourable runner-up to Paparazzi by Alximo. Again, both of these songs are genuinely excellent and ones that I can see returning to. Again, both of these songs are genuinely great to excellent and both ones that I can see myself returning to, so honestly these could interchange at any point throughout, and I think we'd all be better off if they both stick around. They're both really welcome. Next week, not really a lot that I can really expect to cross over outside of maybe that Medusa and Khalid collaboration. Although given that there's new singles from Prosper and Martin Garrix that are likely to do well the following week, it might just be a quiet period before the storm comes in, and given that I'll be on vacation, it might be worth it in the long run. But yeah, that's all for this episode of an analysis of dance. See you next time.